The objective here is just to read about DHCP messages, and this is from the Palo Alto Network website, and as we can see here, it's going to be a pretty short read. So we'll see what we can do with it. So DHCP uses 8 standard message types, which are identified by an option type number in the DHCP message. For example, when a client wants to find a DHCP server, it broadcasts a DHCP discover message on its physical subnetwork. So the question is, how does a client find a DHCP server? And the answer is by using DHCP discover. That message is broadcast to its subnetwork. Or to sound less like a reading drone, subnet. Well, if there is no DHCP server on its subnet, and if DHCP helper or DHCP relay is configured properly, the message is forwarded to DHCP servers on a different physical subnet. So if it doesn't exist, it'll go out to other subnets to look for one. So what happens if a DHCP server isn't on the client's subnet? Otherwise, if it doesn't find one right, the message will go no further than the subnet on which it originated. Otherwise. Okay, so I guess if there are no other subnets, that's why they're telling us right here that it'll just die right there in its single subnet. Now, one or more DHCP servers will respond with a DHCP offer message that contains an available network address and other configuration parameters. When the client needs an IP address, it sends a DHCP request to one or more servers. Of course, if the client is requesting an IP address, it doesn't have one yet. So according to RFC 2131, this requires that the broadcast message the client sends out have a source address of 0 in its IP header. So essentially what it's saying right here, I think, is if the client is brand new to the network, it needs a 0 in its IP header. And I love reading RFCs, so 2131 is now on the to-do list. Well, when a client requests configuration parameters from a server, it might receive responses from more than one server. Once a client has received its IP address, it is said that the client has at least an IP address, and possibly other configuration parameters bound to it. DHCP servers manage such binding of configuration parameters to clients. So here's a good question. What do DHCP servers do other than distribute IPs? Well, apparently, they manage binding configuration parameters. Or you could just say they manage binding configs. Now here's a helpful table, and we should come up with questions for tables, because I don't know if you're like me, tables are hard to read. But I assume there are 8 of them here, because that's like the first sentence right here in this docs. Okay, docs from Palo Alto Networks. So DHCP discover we read about, DHCP offer. We read about the request one. It looks like this has some bullet points. It says request parameters from one server and implicitly decline offers from others. Oh, so that's interesting and maybe noteworthy if more than one server starts responding to you. When is DHCP request sent? I should do that in all caps. So that message is sent out when more than one server is replying, and in this message you get to choose which of the servers you'll be accepting. Then we have a DHCPNAK, always good to acknowledge. Then DHCPNAK. Oh, a negative acknowledgement. I haven't heard of those very often. So when is a DHCPNAK sent, negative acknowledgement? And one example of when this is sent is if the client has moved to a new subnet, or it's sent out when the client's lease has expired. Oh, I didn't know IP addresses had leases. Well, our last 3 here is DHCP decline, and this is client to server message indicating the network address is already being used. Oh, this is interesting. DHCP release. This is like moving out of a house maybe. You've packed up all your stuff and you let the server know that you're done. And our last one is DHCP inform. So this is a client to server message requesting only local configuration parameters. Oh, that's interesting. So you're just taking the configuration, not a new network address, because you already have one from somewhere else. And that even sounds messy maybe? So I could ask, what message is used when a client just needs configs? I should say local configs, huh? So in parentheses, network address already provided externally. So there is this short video, short reading on what DHCP messages are.